So I've been seeing some videos on my For You page, and I think that it is finally time to discuss the female loneliness epidemic. Because I know the men have had their own thing, and I'm not here to talk about that. I'm not a man, right? But I will say that the men are more built for it than us. We are not built for this shit, ladies. We don't know how to be alone. These men have been bottling up their emotions and not sharing them with anybody since they were 6, 7, 8 years old. Some of us have never done that. We've always had someone to talk to, a friend, a family member, a significant other, something. And it seems like in 2025, the girls are running out of options because the dating market is terrible. Y'all are literally making fun of girls that are in happy, healthy relationships, saying that having a boyfriend is embarrassing. Miserables. And then y'all also don't have any friends because anytime somebody reposts something that you disagree with, oh, that's how you feel about immigration policy, you're not my friend anymore. Now y'all don't have any freaking friends. Like it's not gonna end well if your requirement for somebody to have a relationship with you is that they have to be on the exact same page with you 100% of the time. No one is. We are all people with our own thoughts, feelings, emotions, and ideas. And if you don't respect that in another person, then of course you're going to be by yourself. There's no one else that's going to fit that mold. Y'all have to learn healthy communication skills. You have to learn healthy relationship skills. Go to therapy if you need to, do something. But if you are sitting at home right now and you don't have 5 friends that you can call, no man, and your family members just don't get you, I promise the only common denominator in all of those scenarios is...
Have you ever wondered what happens when an entire society unravels because of choices made decades ago? Picture this: a world where men and women, once bound by mutual respect and partnership, now stand divided, with one side walking away forever and the other left pleading for connection in a cold, unforgiving void. Stick around to the very end of this video because I'm going to reveal the stark truth about why this crisis is only getting worse and what it means for the future of our world. And yes, if you're fired up by this kind of hard-hitting angry guy content, smash that like button, share this video with anyone who needs to hear it, and hit subscribe to keep the truth coming your way. Let's keep this movement growing. Now, if you want to take control of your financial future and learn how to protect your assets while building real wealth, check out Angry's Crypto Academy. It's your go-to resource for mastering how to buy, sell, and trade crypto like a pro. The link is right there in the description, so go check it out now and start securing your future. And hey, if you're loving these Angry Guy videos and want to show some support, you can buy me a Red Bull using the link in the description. Every bit helps keep this fire burning. And now let's dive into the heart of the matter. We're facing a crisis today, one that's been brewing for decades, and it's not just a passing trend. It's a seismic shift in how men and women relate to each other. Women, across social media and beyond, are sounding the alarm about a loneliness epidemic that's gripping them. They're posting videos, writing articles, and sharing heartfelt pleas about how isolated they feel, how they can't find connection, and how they're struggling to make sense of a world that feels emptier by the day. But here's the kicker. This isn't some random phenomenon. This isn't bad luck or a cosmic accident. This loneliness crisis exists because men have walked away. Men have said, enough is enough, and they're not coming back. And if you're wondering why, let me take you on a journey through the choices, the actions, and the consequences that have brought us to this breaking point. Let's start by setting the stage. For the last 50 years, we've seen a cultural shift unlike anything in human history. Feminism, in its various waves, promised women liberation, independence, and the chance to redefine their roles in society. On the surface, that sounds empowering, and in some ways, it was. Women gained opportunities, entered the workforce in droves, and broke barriers that once held them back. But there was a shadow side to this movement, one that grew darker with time. Instead of fostering equality and mutual respect, certain strains of feminism turned into something else entirely: a campaign that vilified men, dismissed their contributions, and labeled masculinity itself as a problem to be eradicated. Men were told they were toxic, oppressive, and unnecessary. They were blamed for every societal ill, from inequality to personal struggles. And over time, this narrative took root in the culture. Imagine being a man in this environment. You wake up every day to a world that seems to have declared war on you. You turn on the TV, and there's another show portraying men as bumbling idiots or dangerous predators. You scroll through social media, and you see hashtags and slogans that paint you as the enemy. You hear public figures, influencers, and even everyday people casually dismiss your worth, your struggles, and your existence. And then, to top it all off, you face a legal and social system that seems stacked against you, where accusations, even without evidence, can ruin your life in an instant. What would you do? How long would you keep trying to prove yourself to a society that's already made up its mind about you? For a while, men tried. They adapted, they listened, they worked to meet the new expectations, but there's only so much a person can take before they reach a breaking point. And that's exactly what happened. Men started to walk away. They didn't just walk away from relationships or dating, they walked away from a society that had made it clear it didn't want them. They stopped pursuing marriage, stopped chasing romance, and stopped engaging with a system that seemed designed to punish them. They found peace in their own spaces, in their own pursuits, and in their own company. And here's the thing, they're not looking back. They've built lives that don't revolve around the approval of others, and they're thriving in ways that nobody expected. Now, let's flip the script and look at what's happening on the other side. Women who were told for decades that they didn't need men, that they could rely on the state, their careers, or their independence are starting to feel the weight of those choices. Inflation is through the roof, groceries are unaffordable, and housing costs are crushing. The state, which was supposed to be their safety net, is stretched thin, underfunded, and unable to deliver the support it promised. Careers, while fulfilling for some, aren't filling the void of connection, family, or community that so many crave. And now, as men have stepped back, women are finding themselves in a world that feels colder, lonelier, and far less secure than they were led to believe it would be. You see, humans weren't designed to live in isolation. We're wired for connection, for partnership, for community. For centuries, men and women worked together, each bringing their strengths to the table to build families, homes, and societies. Men provided protection and resources, women nurtured and sustained, and together they created something greater than the sum of their parts. But when that balance was disrupted, when one side was told they could do it all alone, the foundation started to crack. Women were encouraged to reject the family unit, to prioritize individual ambition over collective strength, and to view men as obstacles rather than allies. And now, as the consequences of those choices come into focus, the loneliness is palpable. Let's talk about social media for a moment because it's become the megaphone for this crisis. Scroll through any platform and you'll see women sharing their stories, videos of tears, posts about heartbreak, and raw confessions about how hard it is to find someone to share their lives with. They're begging for men to come back, to engage, to care. But here's the harsh reality, men aren't listening anymore. They've tuned out. They've heard the message loud and clear for decades that they're not wanted, not needed, not valued, and so they've moved on. They're not sitting around waiting for an apology or an invitation to return. They've found their own paths, whether it's through hobbies, friendships, or simply embracing a life of solitude that's far more fulfilling than the alternative. This isn't just about dating or relationships, though. This is about the fabric of society itself. When men walk away, it's not just women who feel the impact, it's the entire system. Families aren't forming at the same rates they used to. Birth rates are plummeting in many parts of the world. Communities, once held together by shared values and mutual support, are fraying at the edges. And the economy, it's taking a hit too. Men who've opted out aren't just withdrawing from relationships, they're stepping back from the workforce, from consumerism, from the endless grind that society expects them to fuel. They're saying, Why should I keep running on this hamster wheel when I get nothing but criticism in return? Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Isn't this just a phase? Won't things balance out eventually? Let me be clear. This isn't a temporary blip. This is a generational shift, one that's been building for decades and won't be undone in a few years. The damage done by 50 years of division, of pitting men and women against each other, isn't something you can fix with a few viral videos or a new social movement. Relationships, trust, and mutual respect take time to build. And when you spend half a century tearing them down, you don't get to snap your fingers and expect everything to fall back into place. Men have adapted to a world that rejected them, and they're not going to unlearn that adaptation just because the other side is starting to feel the pinch. Let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. What does it mean for a society when men and women can't find common ground? What does it mean when the very idea of partnership becomes a relic of the past? History gives us some clues. Societies that lose their cohesion, that fracture along lines of gender, class, or ideology, don't tend to last long. They become vulnerable to economic collapse, to external threats, to internal decay. When people stop working together, when they stop believing in a shared future, the whole system starts to wobble. And right now, we're wobbling hard. But here's where the story gets even more complex. This isn't just about men walking away or women feeling lonely. It's about the systems and ideas that got us here in the first place. Feminism, as it was sold to the world, wasn't just about empowering women, it was about reshaping society in ways that prioritized individual gain over collective good. It told women they could have it all without compromise, and it told men they were expendable. The state stepped in as a substitute for family, for community, for partnership, promising to fill the gaps. But the state isn't a husband, a father, or a friend. It's a bureaucracy, and bureaucracies don't care about your loneliness or your dreams. They care about power, control, and keeping the machine running. And now, as the machine sputters, as the promises of endless independence and state support start to crumble, people are waking up to the reality. Hey guys, in a world pushing you to own nothing and be happy, crypto is your key to survival. Join Angry's Crypto Academy to master buying, selling, and trading crypto. Make huge profits and safeguard your wealth. Plus, discover the one crypto virtually no one is talking about, poised to create new millionaires in the upcoming bull run. The link is in the description of the video below. Go check it out now. Women are realizing that the system they were told to trust isn't delivering. Men are realizing that the society they were told to serve doesn't value them, and both sides are left staring at the wreckage, wondering how we got here. But the answer isn't a mystery. We got here because we stopped valuing the things that hold societies together: trust, respect, cooperation, and a shared vision for the future. We traded those for slogans, for ideologies, for the illusion of freedom without responsibility. Let's talk about responsibility for a moment, because that's a word that doesn't get enough airtime. Every choice has a consequence, and every action has a ripple effect. When women were encouraged to reject men, to prioritize careers and independence over family and partnership, they were making a choice. When men were told they were toxic, unnecessary, and better off sidelined, they were pushed toward a choice. And now, as those choices collide, we're seeing the fallout. Women are lonely, men are gone, and the society we all depend on is starting to crack under the strain. But here's the thing about responsibility: it doesn't just mean owning your mistakes, it means recognizing the power you have to shape the future, even in the midst of a mess. So, what's the path forward? That's the question everyone's asking, even if they don't say it out loud. For men, the answer seems clear, at least for now. They're done playing a game that's rigged against them. They're building lives that don't depend on approval or validation from a society that's been kicking them for decades. They're finding meaning in their own way, whether it's through work, hobbies, or simply embracing the freedom of not caring what anyone else thinks. And honestly, can you blame them? When you've been told you're the problem for long enough, you stop trying to fix it and start focusing on yourself. For women, the path is less clear, and that's where the pain is most visible. The loneliness they're expressing isn't just about romantic relationships, it's about the loss of community, of family, of a sense of belonging. Social media is full of stories about women who feel adrift, who thought they were doing everything right, only to find themselves alone in a world that's harder than they expected. And the tragedy is they were sold a bill of goods. They were told that independence was the ultimate goal, that men were optional, that the state would always have their back. But independence without connection is just isolation, and the state's promises are only as good as its budget. Let's dig deeper into this mess because the surface level pain points, loneliness, disconnection, men walking away, are just symptoms of a much bigger disease. We need to talk about how we got to this point, not just in terms of actions, but in terms of the ideas that shape those actions. The story starts long before the social media posts or the viral videos about loneliness. It starts with a shift in how we, as a society, decided to view the roles of men and women and how we let those views fester into something that's now tearing us apart. This isn't just about hurt feelings or bad breakups. This is about a deliberate reshaping of human relationships that's left us all worse off. Go back a few decades and you'll see the seeds being planted. The Cultural Revolution of the 1960s and 1970s wasn't just about civil rights or free love, it was about questioning everything, including the structures that had held societies together for centuries. Marriage, family, gender roles, all of it was put under a microscope and labeled as oppressive, outdated, or in need of a complete overhaul. Now, questioning traditions isn't inherently bad. Sometimes you need to shake things up to make progress. But what happened next wasn't just shaking, it was smashing. Instead of refining what worked, we started tearing down the foundations without a clear plan for what would replace them. And when you demolish a house without building a new one, you're left with nothing but rubble. Feminism, in its early days, had noble goals. It pushed for women's right to vote, to own property, to pursue education and careers. Those were wins, no question about it. But as the decades rolled on, the movement morphed into something else. It wasn't just about equality anymore. It became about flipping the script entirely. Men, who had once been seen as partners in the dance of life, were recast as the villains. Masculinity, which had been valued for its strength, protectiveness, and drive, was branded as toxic, dangerous, and something to be ashamed of. The message wasn't subtle. Men were the problem, and women could only thrive by breaking free from them. That idea didn't just take root, it spread like wildfire, fueled by academics, media, and a growing cultural disdain for anything that smelled remotely traditional. Now, let's be real for a second. Men aren't perfect. Never have been, never will be. They've made mistakes, acted selfishly, and sometimes failed to live up to their responsibilities. But the same goes for women because that's just human nature. The problem wasn't that men were flawed. The problem was that their flaws were weaponized to paint them as the enemy. Every misstep, every failure, every bad actor was held up as proof that men, as a group, were holding society back. And while this narrative was gaining steam, men were expected to sit quietly, take the criticism, and change to fit a new mold, one that often demanded they suppress their instincts, their ambitions, and their very identity. Imagine you're a young man growing up in this world. You're told from childhood that your natural traits, your energy, your competitiveness, your desire to lead are problems to be fixed. You're bombarded with messages that you're inherently oppressive, that your presence is a threat, that you need to apologize for existing at school. You see programs and policies that prioritize girls' success while your struggles are brushed off with phrases like man up or boys will be boys. In the media, you're either a caricature of a villain or a punchline for a joke. And when you step into the dating world, you're navigating a minefield where one wrong move, one misjudged word could cost you your reputation, your job, or your future. How long would you keep trying to play by those rules before you decided the game wasn't worth playing? That's exactly what men did. They stopped playing, they looked at the board, saw it was rigged, and walked away. But this wasn't a tantrum or a moment of weakness, it was a calculated choice. Men started asking themselves, why should I keep investing in a system that doesn't value me? And the answer was clear, they shouldn't. So they redirected their energy. They poured it into their own lives, into fitness, gaming, entrepreneurship, or just finding peace in solitude. They built communities with other men who shared their experiences, not out of bitterness, but out of a desire to create something better than what they'd been offered. They found freedom in opting out, and that freedom is something they're not willing to give up. Now, let's shift gears and talk about the other side of this equation, because the story isn't complete without it. Women were sold a vision of a world where they could have everything: career, independence, freedom, without needing anyone else. The pitch was seductive. You don't need a man to be happy, you don't need a family to feel fulfilled, and you don't need to compromise your dreams for anyone. The state would be there to support you with welfare, health care, and opportunities galore. Your career would be your legacy, your independence, your crown. And for a while, it seemed like the dream was coming true. Women climbed corporate ladders, broke glass ceilings, and celebrated their newfound autonomy. But dreams have a way of revealing their cracks over time. Fast forward to today, and the cracks are impossible to ignore. The cost of living is skyrocketing: rent, groceries, utilities, all eating away at paychecks that haven't kept pace. The state, which was supposed to be the ultimate safety net, is buckling under its own weight, with budgets stretched thin and promises left unfulfilled. Careers, while rewarding for some, often come with long hours, relentless pressure, and a nagging sense that something's missing. And relationships? They've become a battlefield with trust eroded by years of division and misunderstanding. Women who bought into the "you don't need anyone" mantra are starting to feel the weight of that choice, not because they're weak, but because humans aren't built to thrive in isolation. This is where the loneliness comes in, and it's not just a personal issue, it's a societal one. Women are taking to social media, sharing stories of their struggles, their fears, their longing for connection. They're not just talking about romantic relationships, though that's part of it. They're talking about the loss of community, the absence of family, the feeling of being adrift in a world that's colder than they expected. These aren't isolated cases. They're part of a broader pattern, one that's showing up in studies, surveys, and countless online conversations. Women are reporting higher rates of loneliness, anxiety, and dissatisfaction than ever before. And the numbers don't lie. Something's broken. And it's not just their hearts, it's the system they were told to trust. But here's the part that stings: the system isn't going to fix itself. The state, the media, the cultural forces that push this divide aren't suddenly going to reverse course and say, oops, our bad. They're too invested, too entrenched, too committed to the narrative they've been selling for decades. And men, who might have once been willing to step up and bridge the gap, aren't interested anymore. They've seen the writing on the wall, and they're not signing up for a role that comes with nothing but blame and expectations. They've found their own peace, their own purpose, and they're not going to sacrifice it for a society that's already shown them the door. So, what does this mean for the future? That's the question we need to wrestle with, because this isn't just about today. It's about the world we're leaving for the next generation. When men and women can't find common ground, when relationships become a relic of the past, you don't just lose love, you lose the building blocks of society. Families stop forming, children stop being born, and communities stop functioning the way they're supposed to. We're already seeing it happen. Birth rates are plummeting in countries across the globe, from Japan to Europe to North America. Cities are filling up with single person households, not because people love being alone, but because they don't see another option. And the economy, which depends on growth and stability, is starting to feel the strain of a population that's shrinking and disengaged. Let's talk about the economy for a moment because it's a piece of this puzzle that doesn't get enough attention. Men walking away isn't just about dating or marriage, it's about their role in the broader system. When men opt out, they're not just withdrawing from relationships, they're stepping back from the workforce, from consumerism, from the endless cycle of production and spending that keeps the machine running. They're saying, why should I grind for a society that doesn't respect me? And they've got a point. If you're constantly told you're the problem, why would you keep fueling the system that's spitting in your face? The result is a growing number of men who are working just enough to get by, or not working at all, choosing instead to live minimally, to focus on their own goals, or to reject the rat race entirely. This has the ripple effects. Businesses are struggling to find workers, industries are facing labor shortages, and tax revenues are taking a hit because fewer people are earning and spending at the levels they used to. Meanwhile, women who were told their careers would be their salvation are finding that the workplace isn't the utopia it was made out to be. Long hours, cutthroat competition, and a lack of work life balance are leaving many feeling burned out, not empowered. And with men stepping back, the traditional safety nets, partners, families, communities are crumbling, leaving women to navigate this harsh reality on their own. The state can't fill that gap, no matter how many programs it rolls out, because bureaucracies don't love you, don't care about your dreams, and don't hold you when the world feels like it's falling apart. Now, I'm not saying this to point fingers or pile on the blame. The truth is, both men and women have been caught in a trap set by forces bigger than themselves. Ideas, systems, and cultural shifts that promise freedom but deliver division. Men were told they were obsolete, so they left. Women were told they could do it all, so they tried. And now, both sides are staring at the consequences, wondering how to pick up the pieces. But picking up the pieces isn't as simple as it sounds because the trust that once held us together is gone. Trust takes years to build and moments to destroy, and we've spent decades destroying it. Rebuilding it will take more than apologies or good intentions. It'll take a complete rethink of how we see each other, how we value each other, and how we build a future that works for everyone. Let's talk about that future because it's not all doom and gloom. There's power in recognizing the problem, in calling it out for what it is. Men have already started carving out their own paths, finding meaning in ways that don't depend on a broken system. They're proving that you don't need society's approval to live a good life. For women, the road is tougher, but it's not hopeless. The loneliness they're feeling is a signal, a wake up call that something needs to change. It's a chance to question the narrative they've been fed, to reject the idea that independence means isolation, and to seek out connections, real, meaningful connections that go beyond what the state or a career can offer. But here's the catch: change starts with honesty. We can't keep pretending that the current path is sustainable. We can't keep ignoring the divide between men and women or acting like it's just a phase that'll magically resolve itself. We need to have hard conversations about the role of feminism, about the demonization of men, about the unrealistic expectations placed on women, about the systems that profit from keeping us divided. Those conversations won't be easy and they won't make everyone happy, but they're necessary if we want to avoid a future where loneliness and disconnection are the norm. So, where do we go from here? For men, it's about staying true to the paths they've chosen, but also being open to new possibilities, not out of obligation, but out of a desire to build something better. For women, it's about recognizing the value of partnership, of community, of the things that make life worth living beyond a paycheck or a title. And for all of us, it's about rejecting the lies we've been told that men and women are enemies, that independence is the ultimate goal, that we can thrive without each other. We can't. We never could. Humans are built for connection, and no amount of ideology or propaganda can change that. Now that we've laid out the problem and traced its roots, let's get into the nitty gritty of what this crisis really means. Not just for individuals, but for the soul of our society. We're not just talking about lonely women or disengaged men. We're talking about a fracture in the very fabric of human connection, a tear that's been widening for decades and shows no signs of mending on its own. This isn't a small issue we can brush off with a few feel good platitudes or a viral hashtag. This is a reckoning, a moment where we have to face the consequences of choices made long before most of us were even born. And if we're going to understand it, we need to go beyond the surface and ask the hard questions. What happens when a society stops valuing the things that make it human? What happens when we trade partnership for ideology, community for individualism, and trust for suspicion? Let's start with the psychological toll, because this crisis isn't just about social trends, it's about what's happening inside people's heads and hearts. Humans are wired for connection. It's not just a nice to have, it's a biological and emotional necessity. Study after study shows that social isolation leads to higher rates of anxiety, depression, and even physical health problems. When women take to social media to share their loneliness, they're not just venting, they're giving voice to a pain that's rooted in our deepest instincts. They were told they could thrive without men, without families, without the traditional structures that have anchored humanity for millennia. But the data tells a different story. Loneliness isn't just an emotion, it's a signal that something fundamental is missing, like hunger, telling you your body needs food. And right now, that signal is screaming. For men, the psychological landscape is different, but no less intense. When you're told for decades that you're the problem, that your natural traits are toxic, that your existence is a burden, it does something to you. It doesn't just make you angry or defensive, it makes you question whether you have a place in the world at all. Many men have responded by retreating, not out of weakness, but out of self preservation. They've built mental and emotional fortresses, spaces where they can exist without the constant barrage of criticism. Some have turned to hobbies, others to online communities, and some to a kind of stoic solitude that's both liberating and isolating. But make no mistake, this retreat isn't a sign of defeat. It's a sign that men have adapted to a world that rejected them, and they've done it with a clarity and resolve that's honestly remarkable. But adaptation comes at a cost. When men walk away, they're not just leaving relationships, they're leaving behind a role that society once valued. For centuries, men were providers, protectors, builders. They took risks, shouldered burdens, and found purpose in contributing to something bigger than themselves. That role wasn't perfect, and it came with its own pressures, but it gave men a sense of meaning, a reason to get up in the morning. Now, with that role dismantled, many men are searching for new ways to define themselves. Some find it in personal growth, others in creative pursuits, but many are still grappling with the void. And when you strip away purpose from half the population, you don't just hurt them, you hurt everyone who depends on the balance they bring to the world. Let's talk about that balance because it's at the heart of this crisis. Men and women aren't the same, and that's not a flaw, it's a feature. Each brings something unique to the table, strengths that complement and enhance the other. Men tend to be more analytical, risk tolerant, and physically robust. Women often excel in empathy, nurturing, and emotional intelligence. These aren't stereotypes. They're patterns backed by biology, psychology, and thousands of years of human history. When you put those strengths together, you get a partnership that's greater than the sum of its parts. Families thrive, communities grow, and societies endure. But when you pit those strengths against each other, when you tell one side they don't need the other, you don't just create division, you create chaos. That chaos is what we're living in now. Women were told they could do it all: career, independence, personal fulfillment without compromise. But life doesn't work that way. Every choice has a trade off, and the trade off for prioritizing individualism over partnership is loneliness. The state, which was supposed to step in as a substitute for family and community, can't deliver the kind of support that humans need on a visceral level. Welfare checks don't hug you, social programs don't celebrate your victories, and government policies don't sit with you when you're crying at 2 a.m. Meanwhile, men who were told they were expendable have taken that message to heart and built lives that don't rely on the validation of a society that's been kicking them for decades. The result is a world where both sides are drifting further apart, each grappling with their own pain, each struggling to find meaning in a system that's failing them. And let's zoom out and look at the philosophical side of this, because this crisis isn't just about psychology or sociology, it's about what we believe about life itself. For the last 50 years, we've been fed a worldview that prioritizes the individual over the collective, the self over the other, the present over the future. It's a philosophy that says you are enough on your own, that your happiness is the ultimate goal, that any sacrifice for someone else is a betrayal of your true potential. On paper, that sounds empowering, but in practice, it's a recipe for emptiness. Humans aren't designed to live for themselves alone. We find meaning in connection, in giving, in building something that outlasts us. When you strip that away, you're left with a void that no amount of money, status, or independence can fill. This philosophy didn't come out of nowhere. It was crafted, promoted, and sold by people and systems with their own agendas. Academics pushed theories that framed traditional roles as oppressive, ignoring the ways those roles gave people purpose and stability. Media amplified those ideas, turning men into villains and women into flawless heroes who didn't need anyone else. And politicians and corporations saw an opportunity: divide people, keep them focused on their own struggles, and they're easier to control, easier to sell to. The result was a culture that celebrated division over unity, conflict over cooperation, and self interest over shared goals. And now, as we stand in the wreckage, we're starting to see what happens when you build a society on those principles. Let's talk about the wreckage, because it's not just abstract, it's real and it's measurable. Birth rates are collapsing in the developed countries, with some nations facing population declines that could reshape their economies and cultures within a generation. Marriage rates are at historic lows, with fewer people committing to long term partnerships than ever before. Single person households are on the rise, not because people love living alone, but because they feel they have no other choice. And mental health? It's a disaster. Rates of depression, anxiety, and suicide are climbing, particularly among young people who've grown up in this fractured world. These aren't random trends. They're the direct result of a society that's lost its way, that's forgotten what it means to be human. But here's the thing about wreckage: it's not the end of the story, it's a chance to rebuild, to learn from the mistakes of the past and create something better. The question is, do we have the courage to do it? Do we have the honesty to admit where we went wrong, the humility to listen to each other, the strength to put aside our pride and work together? Because that's what it's going to take. Not just words, not just policies, but a fundamental shift in how we see ourselves and each other. Men and women aren't enemies, no matter how many times we've been told they are. They're two halves of the same whole, each incomplete without the other, each essential to the survival and flourishing of humanity. So let's talk about what rebuilding could look like, because it's not enough to just point out the problem. We need to imagine a way forward. For men, it starts with continuing to carve out their own paths, but also being open to the possibility of connection, not out of obligation, but out of a recognition that partnership can be a source of strength, not a burden. It means rejecting the narrative that they're toxic or unnecessary, and instead embracing their role as builders, protectors, and contributors. It means finding purpose in their own lives, but also in the lives of those around them, whether that's through family, community, or something bigger. For women, rebuilding means questioning the lies they've been sold, about independence, about the state, about what makes life meaningful. It means recognizing that vulnerability isn't weakness, that seeking connection isn't a step backward, that family and community are worth more than any career or paycheck. It means valuing men not as obstacles or oppressors, but as partners who bring something irreplaceable to the table. It means letting go of the resentment and division that have been drilled into them, and instead choosing to build bridges where walls once stood. But rebuilding isn't just about individuals, it's about systems too. We need to rethink the cultural messages we're sending, the policies we're supporting, the incentives we're creating. Education systems should stop pitting boys and girls against each other and start fostering mutual respect and cooperation. Media should stop glorifying division and start telling stories that celebrate partnership and unity. Governments should stop trying to replace families and communities with programs and start empowering people to build those structures themselves. And all of us, men, women, young, old, need to stop buying into the idea that we're better off alone because the evidence is clear. We're not. Let's get practical for a moment because ideas are great, but they don't mean much without action. If you're a man watching this, ask yourself, what's your purpose? What are you building, not just for yourself, but for the world around you? Are you living in a way that reflects your values, or are you just reacting to a system that's been pushing you down? If you're a woman, ask yourself, what do you truly want? Not what you've been told to want, but what your heart is telling you. Are you chasing a version of success that's leaving you empty, or are you seeking the connections that make life worth living? These aren't easy questions, but they're the ones that lead to real change. And for all of us, the challenge is to start small, but think big. Have conversations with the people in your life, not arguments, not debates, but real honest talks about what's going on, what's hurting, what's possible. Support the businesses, creators, and leaders who are working to bring people together, not tear them apart. Push back against the narratives that divide us, whether they're coming from social media, news outlets, or your own circle. And most importantly, don't give up hope. The world is a mess, but it's a mess we can clean up if we're willing to roll up our sleeves and get to work. Now, let's talk about hope because it's easy to get lost in the darkness of this crisis and forget that there's light at the end of the tunnel. History is full of examples of societies that faced collapse and came out stronger. When people recognize the problem, when they commit to solving it, when they choose unity over division, miracles can happen. We're not there yet and we won't get there overnight, but every step we take, every conversation, every act of courage, every moment of connection moves us closer. The question is, are we willing to take those steps or are we going to keep stumbling down the same broken path? I want to circle back to the stories we're seeing on social media because they are a powerful reminder of what's at stake. When women share their loneliness, when they pour their hearts out to strangers online, they're not just asking for sympathy, they're asking for a world that makes sense again. They're asking for connection, for meaning, for a life that feels full instead of empty. And when men choose to walk away, when they build lives that don't depend on society's approval, they're not just rejecting pain, they're reclaiming their dignity, their autonomy, their right to exist on their own terms. Both sides are fighting for something real, something worth having. And that's where the hope lies. If we can channel that fight into something constructive, we can turn this crisis into an opportunity. But hope isn't enough on its own. It needs to be paired with action, with accountability, with a willingness to face the truth. We can't keep pretending that the divide between men and women is someone else's fault or that it'll magically fix itself if we just wait long enough. We need to own our part in it. Men, women, society as a whole. We need to admit that the experiment of radical individualism has failed and that the promise of a world without partnership was a lie, that the systems we've built are crumbling under the weight of their own contradictions. And then we need to start building something better, something that honors the strengths of both men and women, something that values connection over conflict, something that gives us all a reason to believe in the future, So, what's it going to be? Are we going to keep pointing fingers, keep retreating into our corners, keep pretending the problem doesn't exist? Or are we going to step up, face the mess we've made, and start putting the pieces back together? The choice is ours, but the clock is ticking. Every day we wait, the divide grows wider, the loneliness grows deeper, and the hope grows dimmer. We can do better. We have to do better. Because if we don't, we're not just failing ourselves, we're failing the generations that come after us, the ones who'll inherit the world we leave behind. We've been peeling back the layers of this crisis, and by now, it's clear that we're not just dealing with a social issue or a cultural trend. We're dealing with a moral and existential challenge that cuts to the core of what it means to be human. The divide between men and women, the loneliness epidemic, the unraveling of trust and partnership, these aren't just problems to be solved with a quick fix or a new policy. They're symptoms of a deeper sickness, one that's been festering in our values, our choices, and our priorities for far too long. If we're going to find a way out of this mess, we need to get practical, get honest, and get serious about what it's going to take to rebuild. So, let's roll up our sleeves and talk about what that looks like, not just in theory, but in the real world, where people are hurting, systems are failing, and time is running out. First, let's talk about the practical steps we can take because ideas are only as good as the actions behind them. If we're going to bridge the gap between men and women, we need to start with the basics: communication and respect. For too long, the conversation has been dominated by shouting matches, blame games, and one sided narratives that leave no room for understanding. Men have been told they're the problem, women have been told they're victims, and the result is a stalemate where nobody listens and everybody loses. That has to stop. We need spaces, real, honest spaces where men and women can talk without fear of being judged, canceled, or dismissed. Not debates, not arguments, but conversations where people can share their experiences, their fears, their hopes, and actually hear each other. Imagine what that could look like. Picture a community center, a church, or even an online forum where men and women sit down and say, "This is what I've been through. This is why I'm angry. This is what I need." No agendas, no scripts, just raw, unfiltered truth. Men could talk about the pressure of being labeled toxic, the fear of false accusations, the exhaustion of trying to prove themselves in a world that's already written them off. Women could talk about the loneliness, the struggle to balance ambition with connection, the betrayal of a system that promised them everything and delivered so little. And instead of pointing fingers, they could start to see each other, not as enemies, but as people who've both been caught in the same broken machine. But creating those spaces isn't enough on its own. We need to back them up with cultural change. And that starts with the stories we tell. The media, movies, TV shows, social media influencers, has played a massive role in driving this divide. For decades, men have been portrayed as either villains or idiots, while women have been sold an impossible ideal of flawless independence. That's not an accident. It's a deliberate choice by people who profit from keeping us divided. If we're going to turn things around, we need to demand better, support creators who tell stories of partnership, of mutual respect, of men and women working together to build something meaningful. Call out the ones who peddle division, who thrive on clicks and controversy at the expense of truth. And most importantly, be intentional about the stories you consume, because what you watch, what you share, what you amplify shapes the world more than you think. Let's take it a step further and talk about education, because that's where so much of this starts. Our schools have become battlegrounds for ideology, with boys and girls pitted against each other from a young age. Boys are disciplined for being too energetic, too competitive, too masculine, while girls are pushed into a mold of academic perfection and social conformity. Both are taught to see the other as a rival, not a partner. That's not education, it's indoctrination, and it's setting kids up for a lifetime of conflict. We need to rethink how we teach, how we raise the next generation, Boys should be encouraged to channel their energy into leadership, creativity, and responsibility, not shamed for it. Girls should be empowered to pursue their dreams without being told they have to reject family or partnership to do it. And both should be taught that men and women are stronger together, that their differences are a source of strength, not division. But education isn't just about schools, it's about families too. Parents, you have a role to play here, and it's a big one. If you're raising boys, teach them to be proud of who they are, to embrace their strengths without apology, but also to respect and value women as equals. If you're raising girls, teach them to chase their goals, but also to understand that connection and community are just as important as independence. And for all kids, model what partnership looks like. Show them what it means to work through conflict, to forgive, to build something together. Because the truth is, kids don't learn from lectures, they learn from what they see. If all they see is division, resentment, and isolation, that's what they'll carry into the future. Now, let's talk about the role of systems, because individual actions and cultural shifts can only go so far if the structures around us are working against them. Governments, corporations, and institutions have a stake in this crisis, whether they admit it or not. For too long, they've leaned into policies and practices that incentivize division, welfare systems that undermine families, workplace cultures that pit men and women against each other, legal frameworks that assume guilt without evidence. That needs to change. We need policies that strengthen families, not replace them. We need workplaces that value both men's and women's contributions without turning it into a zero sum game. And we need a justice system that protects the innocent while punishing the guilty, not one that picks sides based on narrative or optics. But systems don't change on their own, they change when people demand it. That means getting involved, speaking up, holding leaders accountable. Vote for politicians who prioritize unity over ideology, who care about families and communities more than power or headlines. Support businesses that treat men and women fairly, that promote cooperation rather than competition. And don't be afraid to call out the ones that don't. Every dollar you spend, every vote you cast, every voice you raise is a signal to the system that you're paying attention, that you expect better, that you won't settle for a world that's falling apart. Let's get personal for a moment, because this crisis isn't just about society, it's about you, the person watching this video. What are you doing to bridge the gap? Are you part of the problem or part of the solution? If you're a man, are you building a life that reflects your values? Or are you just coasting, letting resentment or apathy guide your choices? Are you open to connection, to partnership, or have you written it off because the world's been too hard on you? If you're a woman, are you chasing a version of success that's leaving you empty, or are you seeking the things that truly matter? Love, family, community. Are you willing to let go of the narratives that have kept you angry, kept you isolated, kept you from the life you want? These are tough questions, and they're not meant to make you feel good. They're meant to make you think. Because the truth is, change starts with you, not with the government, not with the media, not with some abstract society out there. You have the power to make different choices, to build different relationships, to create a different future. It won't be easy. And it won't happen overnight, but every step you take matters. Every conversation you have, every assumption you challenge, every moment you choose connection over division moves the needle. And if enough of us do it, we can turn this ship around. Let's talk about the moral dimension of this, because at its core, this crisis is about right and wrong. For too long, we've let moral relativism cloud our judgment, telling ourselves that every choice is equal, that every lifestyle is valid, that there's no such thing as a wrong path, but that's a cop out. Choices have consequences, and not all consequences are created equal. When we prioritize individualism over community, when we vilify one group to elevate another, when we trade long term stability for short term gain, we're making moral choices, and we're reaping the results. Loneliness, division, and despair aren't just accidents, They're the wages of a society that's lost its moral compass. So, what does it mean to choose differently? It means valuing the things that make us human: love, trust, sacrifice, commitment. It means recognizing that men and women aren't enemies, that their strengths are meant to complement each other, not compete. It means admitting that we've been wrong, that we've let ideology and pride lead us astray, and that we need to find our way back. It means choosing humility over arrogance, forgiveness over resentment, hope over cynicism. These aren't just buzzwords, they're the building blocks of a life worth living, of a society worth fighting for. But choosing differently requires courage because the world isn't going to make it easy. The systems that profit from division, the voices that thrive on conflict, the narratives that keep us angry, they're not going to go quietly. They'll push back, they'll mock, they'll try to shame you into staying silent. But courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when you're scared, even when the odds are against you, even when the world tells you it's pointless. And right now, the world needs courageous people, men and women who are willing to stand up, speak out, and build something better. Let's talk about what better could look like because it's not enough to just tear down what's broken. We need a vision to aim for. Picture a world where men and women see each other as allies, not adversaries, where boys grow up proud of their strength and girls grow up confident in their nurturing, where families are the cornerstone of society, not an afterthought, where communities thrive because people care about each other, not just themselves, where the media tells stories of hope and partnership, not division and despair, where systems support connection, not isolation. That world isn't a fantasy. It's possible, but only if we're willing to work for it. So, how do we get there? It starts with small, intentional steps. If you're a man, reach out to the men in your life, friends, brothers, sons, and talk about what it means to be a man today. Share your struggles, your victories, your hopes. Build a community that lifts each other up, that rejects the lies about toxicity and embraces the truth about strength and purpose. If you're a woman, connect with the women around you, sisters, mothers, friends, and have honest conversations about what you want, what you need, what's missing. Support each other in seeking connection, in valuing partnership, in letting go of the resentment that's been holding you back. And for all of us, the challenge is to be the change we want to see. Model respect in your relationships, whether they're romantic, platonic, or professional. Challenge the narratives that divide us, whether they're coming from a news anchor, a social media post, or a family member. Support the people and organizations that are working to bring us together and call out the ones that are tearing us apart. And above all, don't lose sight of the bigger picture. This isn't just about you or me or the person next to you. It's about the world we're leaving behind, the legacy we're creating, the future we're shaping. Let's talk about legacy for a moment, because that's what's really at stake. Every choice we make, every action we take is a brick in the foundation of the world our children and grandchildren will inherit. Right now, that foundation is cracked, unstable, ready to collapse under the weight of our mistakes. But it doesn't have to stay that way. We have the power to lay new bricks, to build something stronger, something that will stand the test of time. That's not just a responsibility, it's a privilege, a chance to leave a mark that matters, to create a world where connection triumphs over isolation, where partnership triumphs over division, where hope triumphs over despair. But building that world starts with facing the truth. And the truth is, we've got a long way to go. The divide between men and women, the loneliness epidemic, the collapse of trust, these are not small problems, and they won't be solved with small solutions. We need bold ideas, courageous actions, and a relentless commitment to doing what's right, even when it's hard, even when it's unpopular, even when it feels like the whole world is against us. Because the alternative, continuing down this path of division and despair, is not an option. We've seen where it leads, and it's not a place anyone wants to live. We've come a long way in this journey, peeling back the layers of a crisis that's not just reshaping relationships, but redefining what it means to live in a connected human society. We've talked about the roots of the divide between men and women, the psychological and societal toll, the moral failures, and the practical steps we can take to start rebuilding. But now, as we stand at the crossroads, it's time to pull it all together and ask the question that matters most. Where do we go from here? How do we take a world that's fractured, angry, and lonely and turn it into something worth believing in? This isn't about wishful thinking or empty promises. It's about facing the hard truth, rolling up our sleeves, and committing to a future that's better than the one we're headed toward. So let's dive into the final stretch and lay out a roadmap for hope, action, and change. First, let's take a moment to acknowledge the scale of what we're up against. The loneliness epidemic, the retreat of men, the erosion of trust. These aren't isolated issues, they're interconnected pieces of a larger puzzle. For decades, we've been fed a diet of division, told that men and women are better off apart, that independence is the ultimate prize, that the systems we've built can replace the human connections we've lost. The result is a world where people are more connected online than ever before, yet more isolated in their hearts and minds. Women are crying out for connection. Men are building walls to protect themselves, and society is buckling under the weight of its own contradictions. That's the reality we're starting from. And pretending it's anything less would be a disservice to the truth. But a reality as grim as it can be is also the foundation for change. When you hit rock bottom, you've got nowhere to go but up. And that's where we are right now. The pain we're seeing, the posts about loneliness, the stories of men walking away, the statistics on declining families and rising despair is a wake up call. It's a signal that we can't keep doing things the same way and expect different results. And the beauty of a wake up call is that it gives you a choice. You can hit snooze and let the world keep crumbling, or you can get up, face the day, and start building something new. I'm betting on the second option, and I'm betting you are too, because if you've made it this far in the video, you're not here for excuses, you're here for answers. So let's talk about those answers, starting with the big picture. If we're going to rebuild, we need a vision, a clear, compelling idea of what we're aiming for. That vision isn't about going back to some idealized past, because the past wasn't perfect. It's about taking the best of what worked: partnership, community, mutual respect, and combining it with the lessons we've learned from our mistakes. It's a world where men and women see each other as allies, not adversaries, where their differences are celebrated as strengths, not weaponized as weaknesses. It's a world where families are the heartbeat of society, where communities are built on trust, where people find meaning and connection rather than isolation. That's the goal, and it's not a pipe dream, it's a possibility, but only if we're willing to fight for it. Fighting for that vision starts with redefining what success looks like. For too long, we've been sold a lie that success is about money, status, or individual achievement. Women were told they could have it all: career, independence, or freedom without sacrifice. Men were told their worth lies in what they provide, but then punished for trying to fulfill that role. Both were set up to fail, chasing a hollow version of success that leaves you empty no matter how much you achieve. Real success isn't about standing alone at the top of the mountain. It's about who's standing with you, who you've lifted up, who you've built a life with. It's about love, legacy, and the knowledge that you've made the world better than you found it. For women, redefining success means letting go of the pressure to be everything all at once. It means recognizing that ambition is valuable, but so is connection. It means valuing the role of family, of community, of partnership, not as a step backward, but as a step toward a fuller, richer life. It means rejecting the narrative that men are obstacles to your happiness and instead seeing them as partners who bring something irreplaceable to the table. It means being honest about what you want, not what society tells you to want, but what your heart tells you, and having the courage to pursue it, even if it looks different from the Instagram perfect life you've been sold. For men, Redefining success means reclaiming your purpose without apology. It means embracing your strengths, your drive, your protectiveness, your ability to build, and using them to create something meaningful, whether that's a family, a business, or a community. It means refusing to let the world define you as toxic or unnecessary, but also being open to connection, to partnership, to the idea that your life is bigger than just you. It means finding balance, living for yourself, but also for the people who matter, for the future you're helping to shape. It's not about proving yourself to a society that's been kicking you. It's about proving to yourself that you're capable of more. But redefining success isn't just about individuals, it's about society as a whole. We need to stop glorifying division and start celebrating unity. That means changing the stories we tell, the policies we support, the systems we build. Media needs to stop pitting men and women against each other and start showing what partnership looks like: real, messy, beautiful partnership. Schools need to stop indoctrinating kids with ideologies that breed resentment and start teaching them how to respect and value each other. Governments need to stop trying to replace families with programs and start empowering people to build strong, stable homes. And all of us need to stop buying into the lie that we are better off alone, because the evidence is clear. We're not, and we never will be. Let's get specific about what this looks like in practice, because vision without action is just a daydream. If you're watching this, you're already taking the first step, educating yourself, questioning the narrative, seeking out the truth. But don't stop there. Start having conversations with the people in your life, friends, family, coworkers, about what's going on, what's at stake, what's possible. Don't shy away from the hard topics, but don't turn it into a fight either. Listen as much as you talk, because understanding is the foundation of change. And don't just talk to people who agree with you. Reach out to those who don't, because that's where the real growth happens. Next, take a look at your own life and ask where you can make a difference. If you're a parent, think about how you're raising your kids. Are you teaching them to see the other gender as an ally, or are you letting the world's division creep into their minds? If you're in a relationship, ask how you can strengthen it, how you can show up as a better partner, how you can build something that lasts. If you're single, think about what you're looking for, not just in a partner, but in yourself. Are you living in a way that attracts the kind of connection you want, or are you letting bitterness or fear hold you back? These are small steps, but they add up, because every choice you make sends a ripple into the world. On a bigger scale, get involved in your community. Support organizations that are working to bring people together: churches, nonprofits, local groups that care about families and connection. Volunteer your time, donate your resources, amplify their message, and don't be afraid to push back against the systems that are failing us. If your school is teaching division, speak up at the next board meeting. If your workplace is fostering resentment, call it out and demand better. If your government is prioritizing ideology over people, vote for leaders who actually care about the future. These aren't just actions, they're statements, declarations that you're not okay with the status quo, that you're committed to something better. Let's talk about the role of technology, because it's a double edged sword in this crisis. On one hand, social media has amplified the divide, giving a platform to voices that thrive on conflict and resentment. It's where women share their loneliness, where men vent their frustrations, where narratives of division spread like wildfire. But it's also a tool for change, a way to connect with others, to share ideas, to build movements. Use it wisely. Follow creators who inspire unity, who challenge the status quo, who offer solutions instead of complaints. Share content that lifts people up, that sparks hope, that reminds us what's possible. And be mindful of your own posts. Every word you put out there is a brick in the foundation of the future. So make sure it's one you're proud of. But technology can't replace real world connection. And that's where we need to focus our energy. The internet can bring us together, but it's in person, face to face, heart to heart, where the real work happens. Join a club, attend a community event, start a book group, anything that gets you out of the digital bubble and into the real world. Build relationships with people who share your values, but also with those who challenge you, because growth comes from friction. And don't underestimate the power of small gestures. A kind word, a helping hand, a moment of genuine connection. These are the threads that weave communities together, that remind us we're not alone, that give us a reason to keep fighting. Let's talk about faith too, because for many people, it's a source of strength in times of crisis. Whether you're religious or not, there's something to be said for believing in something bigger than yourself. Faith, whether it's in God, in humanity, or in the idea that tomorrow can be better than today, gives you the courage to keep going when the world feels hopeless. It reminds you that you're part of a larger story, that your actions matter, that your life has purpose. If you've got faith, lean into it. Let it guide your choices, your relationships, your vision for the future. And if you don't, consider what it might mean to believe in something, to find a North Star that keeps you grounded when everything else is falling apart. As we near the end, I want to address the skeptics, because I know not everyone's on board. Some of you might be thinking, this is too big, too messy, too far gone. Why bother trying to fix it? I get it. The world's a tough place, and it's easy to feel like nothing you do will make a difference. But here's the thing, giving up is a choice, and it's a choice that guarantees the outcome you're afraid of. Every great change in history, every movement, every revolution started with people who refused to give up, who believed that even the smallest actions could ripple into something bigger. You don't have to fix the whole world. You just have to fix your corner of it and trust that others are doing the same. Others might be thinking, why should I care? I'm doing fine on my own. To you, I'd say, nobody's an island. You might feel okay now, but humans are built for connection, and sooner or later that need catches up with you. The crisis we're facing isn't just about other people, it's about the world you live in, the systems you depend on, the future you're part of, whether you like it or not. You can't opt out of society without paying a price. And that price is a world that's colder, lonelier, and harder than it has to be. Caring isn't about being soft, it's about being smart, about recognizing that we're all in this together, that your strength is tied to the strength of those around you. So here's my challenge to you, don't just watch this video and move on. Let it sink in, let it stir something in you, let it be the spark that lights a fire. Take one action today, have a conversation, share a post, join a group, question a narrative, and see where it leads. Then take another tomorrow and another the day after that. Build momentum, build community, build hope. Because the truth is, this crisis isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of a new chapter. And you get to decide what that chapter looks like. Will it be a story of division, despair, and decline? Or will it be a story of courage, connection, and renewal? The pen's in your hand and the page is blank. Start writing. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought. The divide between men and women, the loneliness, the pain, it's not a punishment, it's a lesson. It's teaching us what happens when we forget who we are, when we let go of the things that make us human, when we choose pride over humility, conflict over cooperation, self over others. But lessons are only valuable if you learn from them, if you take the knowledge and use it to do better. We've got a chance right now to learn, to grow, to rebuild. Don't waste it. Don't let this moment slip away. Seize it, own it, make it count. Because if we do, we can create a world that's not just surviving, but thriving. A world where men and women stand together, where loneliness is a memory, where hope is the rule, not the exception. What did you think about what was discussed? Do you agree? Leave a comment sharing your thoughts, because I want to hear from you. Your voice matters, and it's part of the conversation that's going to shape the future. Like the video if you liked it, don't forget to subscribe. And if you think this message needs to be heard, share the video with someone who needs to hear it. And just remember, all roads lead to MWA, men walking away, and cheers.
Nothing says you care like crypto. Nothing can compare. Nothing you care like crypto. Oh, nothing can compare to crypto.